Regional centers are private nonprofit social service agencies that the state of California has set up throughout the state. We have 21 different regional centers serving all 58 counties. Tri-Counties Regional Center is the local regional center here. We serve Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties. If you go, it's done by sort of by population. If you go into Los Angeles, there are 6 regional centers just for one county alone. If you go up to, I'm not sure if it's Alta or far northern, I think they have 9 counties that one regional center serves. So it's different services, different areas. But we're a private nonprofit social service agency. We have social workers who we call service coordinators. And what we do is we work with children who have identified with specific developmental disabilities. The one concerning us tonight is autism. Now, how do we serve, and before we get into that, really, how do we work with persons with autism, or children with autism, or infants with autism? First off, there's the assessment. Regional centers look at things a little different than the rest of the parties here tonight. Special Education Code, which is a federal law, look at what is the eligibility under special education under IDEA for, which is autism or autistic light. It's different than regional centers. We use the medical diagnosis from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. And if you've ever had a chance to look at the two, the diagnosis of autism, the medical diagnosis, it's a more difficult diagnosis to get than the eligibility for special education autism. Essentially, it's like a high jump, the bar is higher. There's more symptoms that the child has to have, but not only having those symptoms, it's also the diagnostic piece. We work with children with autism and adults with autism. We work from cradle to the grave, as we like to say. We work from infants in our early start program up to seniors in their 80s. And we look at what are the symptoms and the severity of those symptoms. And under the California law, a child or an adult, someone to be eligible for our services not only has to have the medical diagnosis of autism, not Asperger's syndrome, not pervasive developmental disorder, not even just, again, if you look at special education code, my understanding as I read it is you really don't even have to have a diagnosis so much as you have certain behaviors such that the eligibility is really the one area that looks like most like for that child you serve is what's called autistic or autistic light. Medical diagnosis has specific symptoms, and under Title 17 California laws, the person has to be substantially handicapped or disabled in 3 or more areas. It's a much more difficult diagnosis to get. The assessment consists of, first off, records reviews. We look at what is your child's physician said, what does the parents say, bring us your baby books, bring us your videos. I can do more with a video of the child's first birthday diagnostically than almost any kind of records you could bring in, because I think you can generally see what's going on with the child very early if you have some really good diagnostic tools such as baby books and birthday videos. We have psychologists, we have pediatricians, we take a look at the child, we take a look at the records, we see the child in the office, and we see the child in school. One thing we're going to be working on is what's called the multidisciplinary, multi-agency team assessment in this county. Again, we're going to be starting to work with more school districts, so we have joint assessments. Working together with the school districts, trying to identify what's going on with the child, what are the diagnostic pieces, and what can we fit and understand. And if the child does demonstrate the types of symptoms, types of disabling areas or handicapping conditions such that autism not only seems to be the most appropriate diagnosis, but also the substantial handicap is clearly established, then that child would be found eligible for regional center services. Regional center services are just unique to the state of California. So if an individual moves out of California and goes to another state, you're no longer you're not eligible for our services, but you'd be eligible for whatever services that state may have or does have. And if that individual, or does not have. But if you move back to the state of California, it's a lifelong eligibility so that you can be plugged back into our services again as they're currently constituted. So we have the assessment piece. It can take a long time. Special education assessments take, 60 days? Under California law, regional center assessments can take up to 145 days. It's a different set of laws, different speed. We look at things a little differently. And then once you're eligible, if the child's eligible, they're then assigned to a service coordinator, and that's what we call our social workers, the service coordinators. And that service coordinator would want to sit down with you, the parents, and to have a face-to-face meeting for what we call an IPP, or an individualized program plan, where they would sit down and talk to you what are your child's strengths, weaknesses, what areas that you feel you need some support, what areas where you're getting support that are outside, for example, if you've got any medical insurance, what is your medical insurance doing for your child or doing for you? What is your insurance not doing? What is school considering doing or not doing? Sometimes families come to us before they've gone to school. Our service coordinators always recommend, if a child is certainly found eligible for our services, we urge you to please contact your local school district, absolutely, because by law, there's certain things we can't do if the schools aren't doing, haven't had their chances to do it first. And secondly, why would you not utilize all the tools at your disposal to help your child? And from our perspective, for children, certainly age 3 to 22, the school district is the most important tool that your child will have, and that where we serve your child more importantly, I believe, afterwards. Some of the tools and things and services that we can do under the IPP is a lot of families ask for in-home adaptive behavior services. For example, children are having trouble brushing their teeth, personal hygiene, toileting issues. A lot of kids with autism seem to have fine motor or sensory issues such that they don't seem to really understand toileting properly. And again, most of us, if you really tried to explain to someone, well, what does it feel like to, if you have a full bladder and you need to urinate, most would say, well, we all know what it feels like, but how do you put that into words? How do you describe it to a child? Most children, it's trial and error. Almost all little kids have their problems, but kids with autism seem to have more problems with sensory issues and understanding what they mean. Again, the occupational therapist, I believe, is going to talk a lot more about that much more articulately than I can. But again, we have behavioral services that can help you, teach you as parents to work with your child, and again, to work with the other team members. We have capacity for some respite. We also have capacity for some social skills training that's in addition to what's going on with school districts. There's a lot of things that come in after what school is doing or what insurance might be doing. But so those are the primary areas where we serve, as well as certainly service coordination. Where regional centers tend to take on much more of an active role with your child is once they have graduated or finished with school. A lot of kids with autism don't necessarily get a diploma, but they will continue on to the post-secondary program at age 22, they'll age out of special education. And then you'll be coming in and saying, well, my child may have autism, but you know what? He'd like to live in an apartment, or I'd like him to live on his own. I'd like him to be able to cook. I'd like him to be able to do his own laundry. I'd like him to be able to use a bus. It'd be nice if he had a job. We're talking about working with the Department of Rehabilitation, and maybe if he can have an apartment and get on the bus and make it to Walmart where they have a job coach working for him, this would be so much, this is a dream for us if we do that. We have tools. We have travel training. We have independent living skills trainings. We have supported living service programs that work to help that individual, your child, because all children grow, believe it or not. Even if you don't feed them that well, they still grow. The more you insist, the more you feed them, the more they grow. But they do grow up, they become young adults, they become full adults. Some of them start saying, well, I'm actually interested in another person. They want to have relationships. We actually have this one vendor which does, I don't want to scare any of the families, but we did, it's called social sexual skills. And it's not how to practice sexual skills, how do you talk to someone? How can you have, what is a friendship, what is a relationship, such that they're not getting a restraining order? Which has happened to some individuals, because they may say, I like that girl. I like her very much, so all I'm going to do is stare at her because I like her. And then that girl reports to her supervisor that she's being harassed. Or in school, so she's reported being harassed. So, there's ways of letting you know how to relate to an individual. So we actually have a vendor who's specialized in helping teach your child, teaching you as parents how to support your child so they can go on a date and have relationships. Because it's a myth that children with autism can't have relationships, can't feel affection. That's absolutely wrong. So there's different types of supports at different times of the child's life. And it's sort of like, there's times when you need more support. You need a lot of support when they're very young. But then parents and things are controlled and working well, need the system. There's times when junior high hits, and junior high can be a very difficult time. So there's some supports that come in there. And then at age 22, or if the child graduates from high school, then they need the adult supports. Again, the way the regional center support is sometimes it's sort of impulses at different times in the child's life. Very different approach than school, which is more steady state type of system, which again responsive to changes, but a little bit more constant contact. So again, it's hard to understand how we work in some respects. I think we really shine much more for adults. But I think that there's a lot of services that we can and would do and will do for infants, we're early start program, and for children age 3 to 22 as well. And I'm glad to answer any specific questions after the program.